गुरु गोविंद दो खड़े काके लागू पाए, बलिहारी गुरु आपने गोविंद दियो बताए। इस भारतीय परंपरा का पालन करने वाले हम सभी लोग आज शिक्षक दिवस के इस अवसर पर अपने परम पूजनीय गुरुजनों का हार्दिक नमन करते हैं, चरण स्पर्श एवं अभिनंदन। मैं डॉक्टर मनीषी बंसल, इलाहाबाद ऑर्थोपेडिक सोसाइटी की तरफ से आप शिक्षक दिवस के इस अवसर पर आप सभी का हार्दिक अभिनंदन एवं स्वागत करता हूं। आज की ये संध्या हम लोगों ने अपने आदरणीय गुरुजनों को उनके आशीर्वाद लेने के लिए एवं अपनी कृतज्ञता व्यक्त करने के लिए आयोजित की है, तथा इसी अवसर पर हम एक इंटरैक्टिव वेबिनार का भी हम लोगों ने आयोजन किया है, जिसको हमारे आईयूए के प्रेसिडेंट इलेक्ट डॉक्टर बी शिवशंकर जी अपनी एक टॉक के माध्यम से देंगे। के बीच में खाली यूपी के ही नहीं, बिहार, बंगाल, झारखंड एवं उड़ीसा से भी अनेक सम्मानित सदस्य इस वेबिनार में जुड़े हुए हैं। मैं उन सभी का स्वागत एवं अभिनंदन करता हूं। हमारे प्रेसिडेंट इलेक्ट डॉक्टर संजय धवन भी हमारे बीच में मौजूद है, मैं उनका भी स्वागत अभिनंदन करता हूं। जूम में साइड वीडियो के होने के कारण बहुत से लोगों को मैं नहीं देख पा रहा हूं। मैं सभी अपने सीनियर्स का स्वागत एवं अभिनंदन करता हूं, उनका आशीर्वाद चाहूंगा और जूनियर्स का वेलकम करता हूं। मैं हमारे बीच में आज के इस वेबिनार में अपनी टॉक देने के लिए इंटरलॉकिंग मैन ऑफ इंडिया डॉक्टर बी शिवशंकर जी मौजूद हैं। मैं डॉक्टर के डी त्रिपाठी सर से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि डॉक्टर बी शिवशंकर सर जी का एक संक्षिप्त, हालांकि वो किसी परिचय के मोहताज नहीं है, फिर भी एक उनका संक्षिप्त औपचारिकता अवश्य संक्षिप्त परिचय दें और उनके बाद उनकी टॉक सुनने का हमको अवसर मिले। डॉक्टर बी शिवशंकर जी, डॉक्टर के डी सर।
Thank you, Manish. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Happy Teachers Day to everyone.
वेबिनार सुन रहे हैं।
Let me present. Hello.
सामने खड़ा बोल तो वहाँ से।
Somebody is speaking. Can you unmute everyone?
Please unmute everybody.
Unmute everyone. Friends, let me introduce a very popular orthopedic leader, teacher and surgeon, Dr. B. Shivshankar, to you all. I think he is one of the most popular orthopedic surgeon of the day, as he is president-elect today, and he did his graduation from very popular medical college, Hubli.
At the outset, let me thank the president of Allahabad Orthopedic Association Club, Dr. Harshavardhan Chandra, then immediate past president Dr. K.D. Tripathi, who was instrumental in me being here today amongst you all, Dr. Manishi, the secretary, Manishi Bansal sir. It was nice to hear more about Dr. R.C. Gupta and Dr. A.N. Verma today, because I have met both of them earlier. I think Dr. R.C. Gupta was the one who started for rheumatoid arthritis patients bleeding his own blood and asking them to eat the clot so that the body produces some antibodies. It will not start thinking as an antibody. That's what I remember vaguely. I'm not sure exactly. It was nice to see one of my greatest, whom I admire a lot, Professor Dr. S.C. Goel today. And there are so many friends of me are also here today. So I don't want to take everyone's name, but I would like to congratulate all the recipients of the award which was given by the Allahabad Orthopedic Club, like Dr. Srivastava, Dr. Kanojia, then Dr. Jnaneshwar Tonk and Dr. C.P. Pal. So with this, I would like to start my today's topic about my journey in interlocking nailing. Before that, how I was treating all these intertrochanteric fractures from 1988 onwards. Friends, I was there in Allahabad in 2018, 2 years back, for one of the orthopedic 42nd orthopedic conference of the UPOA. You can see me with the president at that time, Dr. Amit Rastogi. Then this was during one of my talk. Then had the pleasure of meeting Dr. K.D. Tripathi in person during that time. I had attended that meeting on his invitation only. The most important thing I remember, I had the opportunity to visit with Dr. Tanna sir and Dr. Amit Ajgaonkar to the Triveni Sangam. This is Mr. Rahul, one of Dr. Amit Ajgaonkar's patient. He is son of a senior judge from Allahabad High Court. So he took us. This is a policeman. We had a escort also. We took them and took us in the boat with the police boat. So I had a sacred dip also in the holy water. I could feed the river gulls also. This is a short video which shows about the memories I have about the visit to Allahabad. I am now feeding the river gull on Triveni Sangam at Allahabad. These are all the river gulls. We are now going through Yamuna river. On the backdrop you can see the Sangam where I had just now bath. एक सेव डालता है. This is Rahul and Dr. Tanna. Tanna sir is looking dark because he is against the light.
This is me.
Otherwise, who will know that who has taken the video? These are the river girls and at Triveni Sangam in Allahabad. Thank you for flying along with us, birds. We will remember this trip to Allahabad for a long time.
Superb. They are so beautiful, huh?
Yeah.
Each and every bird looks the same.
Okay. Coming to the topic today. Initially, I will talk about my journey of 3 decades with intertrochanteric fracture, and the main part of my talk will be when I will be happy after doing a PFN, and I will tell about some of the predictors of a good outcome after doing a interlocking nailing. Friends, I did my MBBS from Karnataka Medical College, Hubli. Then I was doing MD anesthesia when I got through All India entrance orthopedic seat at Government Medical College, that is Dr. VM Medical College, Sholapur. So I came to Sholapur in 1989. This was our B block where the orthopedic department was situated. So it's a very old building. It's now almost about 140 years old, this building is. So in that we had orthopedic department. We had 2 units. My teachers were Professor Dr. Vishwanath Iyer and Dr. KP Daga. You might be knowing that Dr. Daga is famous for his Daga nail, and both these professors were honorary professors. I was glad to see so many professors working in your government medical college, but unfortunately in Maharashtra, getting a full-timer to work in a medical college is very, very difficult. So because both the units were managed by only honorary professors, the residents had the full charge of doing all the things in the department, right from seeing the patient to operate the patient. So there was an unwritten rule in the department. In the first initial 6 months at the first house course, we were given chance to do radius ulnar nailing. We were doing L wiring by open nail technique at the time. We were given chance to do tibia V nailing and also femur K nailing either by open or closed method, because femur we were doing by open method, but tibia we were trying to get sometime because it's a subcutaneous bone, we were doing by closed technique. In the second house post, normally we used to get the chance to operate for intertrochanteric fracture, that is jewett nail plate. In the second year, some more surgeries like AMP, Richards, HS were all given a chance. In the third year, major surgery, in the third year, major surgeries including spine we were doing as a resident. This is only because the teachers had so much faith in us. and they were teaching us very nicely. And also because the full-timers was in short supply, that is the reason why we were getting as a resident only all the chance to operate while we were doing our MS itself. That time for intertrochanteric fracture, Jewett nail was the implant for government supply. Richards was very costly that time, of costing about 250 rupees. That was not being supplied by the government. So if any patient wanted that implant, we used to prescribe them unofficially, because in a government hospital we are not supposed to prescribe. So unofficially we used to prescribe them, and they used to bring this implant and we are operating. And there were lots of SP nail plates and unutilized in the stock. So many a time we were doing SP nail plates because the Jewett nail was in short supply and patient was not affording to purchase a DHS. So that is the reason why we were able to do all these surgeries of SP nail plate, everything during that time. Just a little bit about how we were doing X-ray. In the X-ray department, there used to be SP 500, 300 or 500 MA machine, and for intraoperative, there used to be a 30 or 60 MA machine, which was used to take into the OT. Even developing also the X-ray, there used to be a fixer and developer. First, we had to develop the film, then rinse in water, then again fix it in fixer so that the chemical get fixed, then again rinse in water, then it is dried. So from one end to another end, normally it used to take almost about 10 minutes. Even if the developer and fixers were good, it used to take about 10 minutes of time to get an X-ray film printed. When we were doing these surgeries in OT, we used to give a call to the radiology department. The X-ray technician used to come, then he will change it to OT dress, then his assistant will bring the machine inside. All this takes about 10 to 15 minutes time. Then taking an X-ray itself, we had to wrap the cassette with sterile clothes. So AP and lateral picture has been taken. Since these X-ray technicians are used to 500 MA machines in the department, when they are operating on a 60 MA machine, they also are not used to know exactly the exposure depending upon the size of the patient, other things. Many a time the quality of the picture we were getting was very, very poor. And also our radiology department was almost 1 furlong from our ortho OT. So that was adding, the person has to go walking or running and then develop the film in the radiology department and then bring it back to OT. So even a normal 2 AP and lateral X-ray used to take about 15 to 20 minutes. When boss used to be operating, it used to take about 15 minutes because everybody is on toes. But some residents are operating, it normally used to take almost 25 minutes to get this X-ray. This is such one X-ray. So we used to pass the guide wire and take X-ray in both in AP and lateral. Normally we used to pass 2 or 3 guide wires because one of them will know that they are better than the others, and then we used to select them or send a wire parallel to that. Even in my own operation theater in private, I have only a 15 MA machine. Even now that machine is working. So because of the small machine and a heavy patient or a hefty patient, majority of the time the quality of the picture we were getting was also poor, and developing X-ray films used to take about 15 to 20 minutes. So doing a intertrochanteric fracture used to take more than 2 to 3 hours time. And unfortunately, 2 days in a week for both unit, 1 day each, we were not having X-ray control. Our unit was not having X-ray control on Tuesdays OT. So what we used to do was, because there were so many patients lying in the bed, so we used to open the fracture. We used to extend the incision, the Watson-Jones incision. We used to feel with the bone. We used to feel the neck anteriorly, medially, posteriorly, inferiorly, and by guesswork we were passing the guide wire, and then we used to put in the, without even intraoperative X-ray, we were putting this SP nail plate. This is one such case where I am showing where I have put a SP nail plate in while operating without a X-ray control. This is just by knowing the landmarks, expose the neck little more by Watson-Jones approach and feel the neck anteriorly, inferiorly and above, then pass parallel to the anterior cortex and try to get your guide wire inside. So this is how the SP nail used to look. And this is the McLaughlin plate, which you could fix it. There were serrations in the McLaughlin plate, and there was also radial serration in the SP nail. So you can clamp them with the head of the top nut, and you can clamp them at different angle, at 110 degree to 140 degree, different angles this could be placed. So that was the reason why any fracture, whatever the direction the guide wire was going, we used to pass the SP nail immediately over that. If it was inside the head and neck, as long as that is then, we used to just lock a plate from outside. This was a two-piece implant. That's why it was easy for us to adjust the angle. We could adjust to 140 degree or even 110 degree. Whatever the angle required, we were adjusting and fixing with the top nut. So this is how we were doing it. Then there was another type of plate. That plate was little thin, but this was probably cheaper because this was the maximum number of patients. The patients we have operated only with this plate, because this was the only one which was in more supply in the department. Recently during lockdown, I was going through all my slide collection. Friends, I worked in Bombay Hospital for 1 year after my MS. So that time, you could see, I could see the importance of having a proper record, because I worked with Dr. in the KT Dolakia unit. I could see closely Dr. Pachore preserving all the X-ray films and other things. So once I was working there, I learned the importance of preserving the X-rays for future. I started making films. So when I came back to Sholapur, this is the color films. Color films were not available in Sholapur in 1994. So I used to purchase these films whenever I used to go to Bombay for different conferences or workshops. And this used to cost about 150 to 200 rupees each 36 film roll. Then whenever I was going back to Bombay for next conference, I used to go to Baikala for the Bombay Pro Color Lab and get these slides mounted. So this is a color film. After 94, there was no problem because Solapur got a gold color lab where they started processing the films. So this is the reason why I could share some of the pictures with you. During the lockdown, I could trace out. Some of them did excellently well. This one case, what I'm showing, did not do well. You can see that this plate has bent and the fracture has gone into a delayed union or non-union. I don't know what happened subsequently because I left the department in 93 after about 9 months of working as a lecturer in orthopedics. The major problem with this SP nail plate was disengagement of the top nut wherever we are fixing the plate with the SP nail. This is another case operated in a private hospital elsewhere, not in my setup. But you can again see that the similar plate, this plate used to be little flimsy. As I said earlier, the McLaughlin plate was very stiff and stubborn, but this another plate was very, very thin and it used to bend. So disengagement of the proximal top nut from the SP nail plate with the SP nail with the plate and bending of the thin flimsy plate was the commonest problem I used to face at that time. Meanwhile, Jewett nail came. Jewett nail, you can see the thickness of the plate. It is a very strong implant. And the only disadvantage is it's a single piece implant. The SP nail, we could hammer in any direction we could pass and just connect the plate in the same angle. But whereas the Jewett nail, we had to measure the angle properly and hammer the Jewett nail of proper angle only. But this was a very strong implant compared to the SP nail. Definitely our results improved to a great extent once we started using this Jewett nail. The only problem this Jewett nail was giving was especially in unstable fractures. So the only problem it was giving was medialization of the shaft. You can see that the penetration is the commonest problem, especially if the lateral wall was getting broken during the surgery, or if the bone was very osteoporotic and if the reduction was not good. I have seen few cases of Jewett nail cutting out superiorly. So these are the two common problems we were facing because of the fixed implant which was not sliding. So meanwhile, the DHS sliding hip screw of the Richards, which became popular, where the screw can slide within the barrel plate. So we started doing this Richards screw more whenever it is possible. But unfortunately, since I was working in the government institution, prescribing Richards screw was not easy for all the patients. And another thing was, whenever I used to prescribe, or as a resident, we used to prescribe the Richards DHS to one patient. If that patient brings that, some senior in the department, like the registrar, will tell, I will operate that case. So that was one of the reasons why we were more operating with a Jewett or SP nail plate rather than the DHS also at that time, because otherwise we will lose a chance to operate by ourselves. SP nail plate and Jewett were done by first and second year residents. But if DHS was there, the third year resident will say that I'll be doing the surgery. That was the thing which I noticed during my tenure. But even then, as a third year resident, I had enough of experience to use this Richards sliding hip screw in those cases. And these are some of the pictures, again collected from my own old slides. This is somewhere in 93. I was a lecturer for about 9 months time in the medical college. That time I had treated this patient. Recently, last week in our Solapur Orthopedic Club, we were discussing death by a thread. That while doing a DHS, unintentionally the guide wire with a thread went inside the peritoneum and the patient died. This article we were discussing. And one of the honorary associate professor, Dr. Pandari, worked in between 96 to 2000. He sent a reply. It was new at that time, and the senior resident doing it realized that he could feel the tip of the guide wire coming from the opposite side. He was operating on the one side hip, and he could feel that the guide wire has come out from the other side hip. And he called me, that is Dr. Bandari, he called me from the other OT as I was already come out. I was fortunate because I had not left the OT. We first pulled it out from that side, opposite side, where it had come out from the tip. They pulled it out, called the general surgery people immediately. As all the vital parameters were normal, wait and watch, patient recovered uneventfully. That was what he said. So passing a guide wire from one direction, one hip, it has come out almost from the opposite side. So this is what we have seen. I have seen also. This is another doctor who is junior to me by about 4 years. He writes, in our residency, junior resident observed some leakage of fluid to the holes of the DHS guide wire. All were extremely annoyed due to the bladder puncture. DHS was completed and called the general surgery people inside the ortho OT. The registrar started painting the abdomen for the exploratory laparotomy in a decent fashion, cursing all the orthopods. Before the incision, he just called his lecturer. He said, don't worry about, don't operate, put a police catheter inside, deflate the bladder, and the surgery is not needed. So this is how, because we were using long guide wires, and many a time, even if you use short guide wires, it used to penetrate. We all have seen this problem while operating without the CM before the IITV becomes very popular. So I'm intentionally mentioning these two incidences because many of you might have not even heard of doing a DHS without a CM. So that is the reason. Friends, DHS is a very good implant. When you operate, gradually the collapse happens. You can see the screw gradually collapsing into the barrel, and fracture contact surface keeps on increasing and the fracture unites. It's definitely a gold standard for as far as intertrochanteric fracture are concerned. But if the fracture is unstable, does it same hold good? So here are some pictures where you can see that wrong selection of the technique or wrong implant definitely will give trouble, and this is not the final a picture we were expecting in these fractures. Meanwhile, the Baumgartner's apex distance paper also came, and we all learned that the DHS screw placement should be as subchondral as possible so that the cutting through chances will be very less. Then for subtrochanteric fracture, though for intertrochanteric fracture, dynamization can happen along the screw into the barrel. But for subtrochanteric fracture, to have dynamization along the shaft, this Madoff plate was designed. You can see that Madoff plate works only if the lateral wall is intact. If the lateral wall is broken, again in the Madoff plate will also not work. So this is a very costly plate which you can add on to your DHS, but I don't have any experience of using them. Just I've seen few pictures. So because it's very costly, I never thought that I should use it. So for unstable fracture, the medialization keeps on continuing till the fracture becomes stable at some point of time. If you have done a valgus reduction, many a time that becomes stable quite early. That is the reason why chances of failure with a valgus reduction is less compared to a regular neutral reduction. So you can see a good valgus reduction, it cannot further go because this medialization of the shaft will also have to take this along the neck. This neck is abutting the shaft here, so it cannot go further medially. That is the reason why we started doing more and more DHS with valgoid reduction. And to prevent medialization, the buttress plate also came into the market. So you put a stopper that prevents the medialization. This article is again a very useful article. So which talks about an intact lateral wall. This gets broken iatrogenically in almost 38 to 40% of patient in osteoporotic bone, and the uncontrolled medialization will happen. See the screw, see the distance of the screw thread from the barrel, it's so much. But in gradually, this is the article what I'm talking. See now the distance from the thread to the barrel, it has become so less. Once it cannot go further, medialization cannot go further, then it starts cutting superiorly. In these two slides, the whole mechanism of the DHS has been explained beautifully. The DHS keeps on sliding medially till the time the barrel touches the plate. Once the barrel touches the plate, once no more further collapse can happen, the bone starts going into varus if it has not come into stable position. So that is the thing which we should be aware of. Many a time, this fracture of the lateral wall is not recognized on the table. The thin lateral wall, many a time it breaks. This is just an immediate post-operative X-ray. Within few days of time, the surgeon took an X-ray just to confirm that everything is fine. You can see that the lateral wall has broken and the already medialization has happened. That's the problem with DHS for an unstable fracture where the lateral wall is broken. So can we predict this failure? And it leads to failure. Once it starts going medially, it leads to failure. So can we predict the failure by the amount of medialization was the next question. So this article by Parker which came to my mind, so even without any medialization, almost 10% of the DHS fails. If the medialization is more than 30%, then the chances of failure exponentially increases. If the displacement is more than 30%, or if it is about 60%, 60% failure, if it is more than 90%, 100% the failure of the fixation will happen. What is this? So here you can see the lateral wall of the proximal fragment here and the lateral wall of the distal fragment is here. It's about 25% medialization. Means if you see 4 X-rays like that, one of them will fail. This is about 50% medialization. So 1 in 2 will fail. This is, you can see the lateral wall is touching the medial wall here. Medial cortex of the proximal fragment is touching the lateral cortex. This is 100% medialization. 100% medialization means 100% it is going to fail. So we should be able to predict that it is going to fail, and we should take some measure to prevent this medialization. How can we do this? So either we can use a trochanteric buttress plate in a subtrochanteric fracture, or we can use a nail itself. Both of them prevent uncontrolled medialization. Dr. Mukhi from Bombay, he puts in a Enders nail to prevent medialization. He also puts fully threaded cancellous screws to prevent further collapse. So whatever collapse is required, he achieves on table. Once the on table collapse has been achieved, Further uncontrolled medialization is stopped by putting this fully threaded cancellous screw and also by putting a intramedullary endosnell, which Dr. Tanna calls as Dr. Muki's concoction technique. Concoction is everything, like the kada. You add everything, whatever you think. For an osteoporotic bone, while you do the DHS, many a time lateral wall breaks. So it's better to use a trochanteric buttress plate prophylactically while doing the surgery. This was a case while doing a keyhole DHS. You can see that the lateral wall has been broken and already medialization has started. So it looks okay initially. If we leave like this, this barrel is going to slide over this neck screw and it is going to fail. So immediately a trochanteric buttress plate was applied as a stopper that prevented further medialization, and the patient went on to unite without any problem. Unfortunately, while we use trochanteric buttress plate, it fits very well to some of the Indian bones, but some of the elderly female, it doesn't fit that well. So patient will never be able to sleep on this side. That's the basic problem. So I started using T plates and L plates as a trochanteric buttress plate. I apply the DHS. After application of the DHS, I remove 2 screws from the plate. I apply a L plate or a T plate. Here I am using a L plate, and I pass the screw again through the T plate into the through the DHS hole, DHS plate or barrel hole. So this screw is both fixing both the plates, DHS barrel plate as well as the L plate. This was a very short guy, less than 4 feet tall, and I was operating on him for an intertrochanteric fracture. The medullary canal was very, very narrow, just 5 millimeter canal. So I did a pediatric DHS. While doing a pediatric DHS, I saw that my valgus is too much. My valgus cannot be too much unless I have broken the lateral wall. So immediately I added a trochanteric buttress plate, and this is the immediate post-operative X-ray. You can see that is extra valgus I have got in this patient because the crack, the fracture extended in this fashion. And this is after the fracture has consolidated, and I already removed that implant in that patient. So if I had not used this trochanteric buttress plate, this would have gone in further medialization and this would have cut through, or this patient would have gone for something worse outcome. So that is the reason, if you are doing DHS, keep TSP ready on table. So this, whatever the T plate and L plate I use, I call it as I call them as arm army TSP, because this just you can use it on any of this DHS you are using. You can just use 1 or 2 screws will definitely pass, because this is an oblong screw. 1 or 2 screws can be definitely inserted through this plate. So this is about the DHS. So before I complete about the DHS part, I just give some of the information as it was informed. I conducted workshops at many places all over India. It is a picture in Bilaspur, that was in Pune, that was in Chandigarh with Professor Nagi. Then this was in Thane, where you can see Dr. Mukhi also sitting in the audience. So I have conducted workshops all across India. While I was doing in one workshop in Visakhapatnam, one Mr. Dr. Satish Anne, he told, DHS is the bread and butter of orthopedic surgeon. Do something for DHS keyhole surgeries, because I was demonstrating keyhole recon nail, keyhole supracondylar nail, keyhole femur nailing at that time. So he told me unofficially during some time, he said, sir, please develop some keyhole surgery for DHS also. That I took it as a challenge, developed a sleeve for keyhole DHS, modified the instruments. Instead of a triple reamer, I made it as a double reamer, and I started doing keyhole DHS because of one person inspiration that asking me to modify a technique. So this is name also again Solapur sleeve for keyhole DHS. These are the instrument zoom picture. With this instrument, I used to do a lot of keyhole DHS earlier, but later on I restricted to only crack intertrochanteric fracture. This is one such crack intertrochanteric fracture. where with a small incision, less than 2 centimeter, this is 1 centimeter, this is 2 centimeter, less than 2 centimeter incision, I was able to put the DHS. So this is the picture of the same patient. I have done the demonstration of the surgery twice during the Ganga operative trauma course, and you can take a picture of this and you can go to my YouTube site, Dr. B. Shiv Shankar, or you can go to this link and you can see the whole video of keyhole DHS, how it is possible. Many a time I have used just a band-aid after doing a DHS surgery, just I have used a band-aid. I'm not promoting any company here, but that was the one which was easily available. So I used to just dress this wound just with that. You can see the incision, less than 1 inch size incision. So this is at 3 months, you can see such a small incision. I was able to, this was a displaced fracture. You can see that I was able to get a stable reduction and good valgus in spite of with a small incision. But nowadays I don't do anything like that for a displaced fracture. I only restrict the keyhole DHS for fractures which are just crack intertrochanteric fractures. So for a unstable fracture, what the option we had was keeping the beak inside the distal metal canal, what we call it as Diamond-Houston type of osteotomy. Diamond-Houston type of reduction, the proximal fragment can be kept in still valgus and a surface implant can be put. That's one way of doing it. Another way is chop off the extra bone. If the angle of the fracture is not conducive for the fracture to unite, convert them into horizontal fractures or convert them into 45-degree to one another by chopping off the extra bone here and keep the barrel through the fracture site and apply hold to the shaft. So this is what we were calling as non-anatomical but stable reduction. Instead of an unstable reduction, we were doing stable reduction just by putting the DHS through the fracture site and removing a part of the bone, especially from the distal fragment. So we were doing. So DHS is definitely gold standard, but DHS alone may not be the 100% gold standard. So what you require is either a trochanteric buttress plate or a Madoff plate. So with those two combined, DHS is definitely a good implant. So after my MS, I worked in England for about 6 months. Then I also worked in Germany for about 3 months with Professor Holtz and Dr. K.D. Parsh. So that time, though I was there as a Rob Matthews joint replacement fellow, but I had the opportunity to see some of the interlocking nailing as well as the gamma nail being done. I had the opportunity to attend as a delegate in Freiburg, unrimmed femur nail UFN workshop. That was in 1994. I attended a workshop in Freiburg. I was working in Stuttgart. So Freiburg is about 250 kilometers from there. So I went in the morning, attended the workshop and came back in the evening. So gamma nail was being done. Though I didn't attend too many surgeries there because I was more interested in joint replacement surgeries and I used to be more in the replacement OT rather than in the trauma unit. But during emergencies, whenever I used to attend, I have seen some gamma nail cases. So that brings us to the third way or third strategy of reducing the bending moment. The first one is Diamond-Houston type of osteotomy. Second one is non-anatomical osteotomy, non-anatomical reduction, but to get a stable reduction. And the third one is getting an intramedullary implant. Because the intramedullary implant is a load sharing implant, it requires more forces to break or get out. So unlike a load bearing surface implant, intramedullary implants are much more stronger. So after coming back to India, once gamma nail was available in India, I started doing gamma nail. Little bit about the history of intramedullary nail after 1980. This is Dr. Subhash Haldar. He is from Halifax in UK. I had the opportunity to meet him on many occasions. Even I have visited his home in Halifax. So he is the one who has designed gamma nail. Even he has come for IOCON many times. Even in Calcutta he was there. He designed a modified Jekyll nail and he called it as Halifax nail. And he started using it. And he presented this work of Halifax nail in a France conference where Gross was also attending. Within about 6 months' time, Gross came out with a design which was similar to the Halifax nail, and he's marketed this as a old gamma nail. Gross Kemp nail, it was marketed. Then Subhash Haldar wrote a threatening letter to the companies saying that this design is purely mine, you have copied my design. Then the company agreed that Subhash Haldar had designed it, so they named it as gamma nail as a middle path regime. They wanted to please Dr. Gross also, and they wanted to please Dr. Subhash Haldar also, but they gave the royalty to Subhash Haldar for this nail, and gamma nail came into market sometime in 1991. So again, you can see a webinar recently 2 months back I had moderated with him about the whole intertrochanteric fracture as well as the gamma nail journey with Dr. Subhash Haldar. You can type this name ortho-tv-sc Haldar and you can go to that recording. It's a 3-hour talk. Beautifully you can go through the whole journey of gamma nail. Again, you can see this is one of my slide in 1997. 96 the digital images started coming, but in 96 97 I was not having a digital camera, so I was still using the slides at that time. And I used, this is a 82-year-old lady, I have used a gamma nail. So this is one of my first few gamma nails. Because of the good position, because of the good reduction and a stable fracture, probably this fracture united without any problem. But anyway, there was a lot of trouble. You can see that such a big implant, even an Indian gamma nail, which was 17 millimeter, was such a big implant for a, this was a very wide medullary canal in an elderly lady. That was the reason why I was able to push in this nail. That was the basic problem with that. So gamma nail, the problem of gamma nail was a large implant. Isthmus reaming was required because it was a thick at the isthmus junction. Many a time sliding mechanism used to get jammed. Because it's a single screw, many a time while passing the lag screw, head spinning used to happen, especially in basic cervical fractures. As the distal locking is too near to the tip, fracture near the tip used to happen. Then dynamic locking was not available initially. So this was the problem of gamma nail. So synthesis people came with the modified nail, which they named it as PFN. So this is a thinner compared to gamma nail. Isthmus reaming is not required. Interlocking is not away from the tip. All these were considered, and this femoral nail, proximal femoral nail or PFN came into the market in 1997. Once PFN became popular, gamma nail had a gradual death in India because PFN people started doing more and more. Again, in 1999, I had the opportunity to work in Dusseldorf as an Indo-German Orthopedic Foundation fellow. That time, I saw PFN being done in that unit. And as soon as I came back to India, I took some pictures of them. And as soon as I came back to India, I gave those pictures to Yogeshwar implant people and designed this first PFN in 1999. So with this nail, which I had, the pictures I had taken from the original PFN, this Indian version of the PFN came for the first time in 1999. And I did this first surgery sometime in October or November 1999. I did the first surgery. Then Dr. Gadegone from Chandrapur. So he had problem because many a time in the central India, elderly ladies, especially sickle cell ladies, they used to have an excessive bow. Even a 25 centimeter straight nail was coming out or jetting out or causing fracture at the tip of the nail. So he asked, we should have a shorter nail. So he asked in sometime in 2002, and again, Mr. Tushar Pandya of Yogeshwar Implant contacted me, should we go ahead and start a shorter nail. Once I listened to Dr. Gadegone and his problem, I said it's definitely better to have a shorter nail, especially in Indians. And that's how in 2003 onwards, we started to have a TFN, TFN name was given by Dr. Gadegone, trochanteric fixation nail. So since 2004, I'm using this TFN. I use either a TFN or a long gamma nail because both PFN and TFN are side specific. Both of them are straight. Because this 25 centimeter is a too straight in a curved bone, I prefer to use a short TFN, and if there is a fracture in the subtrochanteric area of the shaft, I prefer to use a left or right gamma PFN. So this is about how I started doing the SP nail plate. Then I gradually now shifted in 1999 to PFN. Since 1999, though there were a lot of problems initially, I have stuck to this. Whatever the problem used to happen, I used to analyze and rectify myself. And that is the reason why I could do all this improvement in the design, technique, everything. And that is what I'm sharing, my 21 years of experience with PFN. When I will be after having done a PFN. That's my next part of the talk. So there should be some predictors. So knowing those predictors, we can predict that this fracture is going to do well or not. This was an X-ray with somebody from, I think from Meerut or Aligarh. Somebody shared this picture with me recently, about 3 or 4 days back, 20th August, they have shared me. This X-ray they sent me, what the plans are. They just ask one question, what the plans are. They don't give what is their plan also sometimes. I wrote a reply to that person. It's a difficult to reduce type of fracture because you can see that the lesser trochanter is intact, it's not broken. So shaft will be above in the lateral view. Normally the shaft will be sagging, but here in this case it will be above, neck will be sagging. You will require traction in adduction because this is a fracture already in this position. You require traction in adduction, may require open reduction. If you have to open it, better to do DHS with CC screw. If you are able to get close reduction, PFN and close reduction and PFN is good option. This is what the reply I gave to him, and he sent me after a few days X-ray. This is the X-ray he sent me. You can see that there is so much of gap. The nail is acting as a spacer. He has just inserted the nail through the fracture side. The fracture has got lateralized. If you compare, this is the pelvis. If we make it square, and normally outermost line from the pelvis will graze through the, tangentially go through the lateral cortex or greater trochanter, or it will kiss the greater trochanter. Here if I do this, you can see that the greater trochanter lateral cortex is outside this nail. Here it is inside the line, but here it is outside the nail. So the shaft has got lateralized. This is what I can do the prediction. So it has become lateralized. The patient will never have a good gait. Even if the fracture unites, the chances that the fracture unites with such a big spacer is less. Even if the fracture unites, Trendelenburg gait will be there because of the lateralization of the shaft. So I sent a prediction, it is going to fail, difficult to unite as there is a implant at the fracture site. Even if it unites by chance, if due to continuation in the inferior part, the patient will be never able to walk normally. He will have Trendelenburg dipping gait. He will be limping on the right side. He will not be able to load the right hip. So this is what I wrote him. This is on 14th of July, Professor Dr. Jaideep Das from Burdwan Medical College in Kolkata. He sent me this picture. Did it last week, sir. Please comment, sir. The helical blade had crossed the safety limit because if you know that PFN A2, it has to be 10 millimeter away from the subchondral bone. So it has gone too much inside. So he was worried and he sent me this picture. What reply I wrote immediately? Since the back end of the helical blade, this is the back end of the helical blade, is out of the lateral cortex, penetration chances are less and sliding out chances are more. Unless sliding get jammed, which is less than 10%, because there is a good valgus in this patient, you can see. I thought that it won't get jammed, it will slide out easily and it will not penetrate inside. Today morning he sent this picture, 5th September, he sends me 6 weeks post-op. As you predicted, sir, no cutout, just controlled back out to allow collapse. Patient is in full weight bearing. Thank you, sir, for helping me to conceptualize the pertrogenital fractures properly. My sincere regards to you. Happy Teachers Day. Today morning at 9:47, he shared this picture with me. So this is what we should be able to predict when we see a post-operative X-ray. We should not depend upon what happens in future. We should be able to predict that on day one, this is going to happen this way. The way we predict the market and invest. Similarly, we should predict the fracture once we fix it, and then we should see whether our prediction is going correctly or wrong. That is the reason why I decided to talk about how to predict today. This is a very busy slide. I'm going to take each one of them one after the other. So these are the 10 commandments to predict a successful outcome. First and foremost, good implant from a known company. This is a poor copy. Even if you copy, the copy should be good. Here you can see like a gamma nail, the interlocking at the tip. This is, the nail is not tapered. The PFN, it should be tapered so that insertion will be less easy, and also there is no stress concentration happening. See the screw heads. The screw head, there is no screw head. They are very, very thin. And also, proximal end of the nail. See the size of the proximal end. It's a 13 millimeter nail. Normally the Indian PFNs are 15 millimeter. Here this company has done a 13 millimeter nail, and they are using a 8.5 millimeter cervical board. There is hardly any metal on either side. So it was bound to fail. This is a normal PFN which is tapered and interlocking is away, unlike which is interlocking is near. Here the tapering is not there. So this bolts have a head. Here again the heads are missing in both these pictures. So that was the reason why you can see in due course of time the nail has broken, because there is hardly any metal there. So good known company implant you should be able to use. Second one is good anterior reduction. When you see the cortex, it should be well reduced. Similarly, medial cortex, it should be very well reduced. Why there is importance for posteromedial fragment? Because weight passes through this part of the bone. If this is not taking load, if there is a gap, then it's going to, any implant is going to fail. So we all know, this is a very old article in 1967 by Jewett himself, I don't remember exactly, 1987 I think, Jewett, where he says that posteromedial, this is a 1984 article. Posteromedial comminution and discontinuation is the major cause for this failure. So I designed a terminology which I call it as Shiva's hypothesis. It's not posteromedial reduction. I call it as anteromedial reduction, because anteromedial cortex is strong bone. I can see them. So you hardly can see the posterior cortex. You can see the good anterior cortex. What I can see, I reduce it. So anterior cortex is good cortical bone which doesn't break into too many pieces, whereas posterior cortex is osteoporotic bone which gets crushed. Because of that, reducing anterior cortex is easy because it's a simple jigsaw puzzle, whereas posterior cortex reduction is very, very difficult. It's like putting the first button of your shirt properly. If you reduce your anterior cortex first button properly apply, the last button will be also proper. Similarly, anterior cortex, if you reduce properly, posterior cortex will get aligned automatically. You need not to look toward that. Here you can see there is so much of difference in the anterior cortex. The anterior cortex is so much displaced here. So there is hardly any place for the bone to unite. Whatever the bone space is there, that is also occupied by the implant. When you reduce a fracture, the fracture has to be reduced so that the neck has to overlap over one another in this fashion. This is 100% reduction. Even if there is a 25% loss of reduction anteriorly, there is 25% loss of reduction posteriorly also. So you have only the red area where the bone is touching one another. Even in that, you will put an implant. So there is hardly any bone surface which is there to kiss one another to get united in due course of time. So simple reduction tools like Steinmann pin is very, very useful. You displace anterior cortex, you can see, you can push it down with a Steinmann pin and fix that See, this is a picture, very old picture of 2007. You can see that such a widely displaced fragment. What I did was I used a Steinmann pin. I pushed the neck down. Once I got the anti-reduction, I fixed that temporarily with a K-wire. Then I made an entry. Then I subsequently did a PFM. This is a 2007 X-ray. So this technique I'm using since 2005. So fixing the fracture is very, very important. Another widely displaced neck, you can see with the help of a spatula that could be reduced, or even you can use a Hohmann's spatula or Hohmann's retractor. A widely displaced fragment, you can see the neck, anterior cortex is so widely separated. During surgery, I inserted a Steinmann pin, lifted the neck which was down, fixed that temporarily with a K-wire, got the alignment proper. Once the alignment was got, I fixed that with a K-wire. Then if the K-wire is coming in the way of my neck screws or the nail, I pass additionally K-wires anteriorly, then take out the first K-wire which was coming in the way, then I carry out the nailing or DHS, whatever I want to do in due course of time. See, a minimally displaced fracture, I fixed it in abduction, then I have done the adduction. Once I have done the adduction, for me it is easy to pass a nail also. So that's also very, very important. Without fixing this with K-wires, if I adduct it, fracture opens up superiorly. After fixing, if I adduct, the fracture will be stable in that position. There is no problem. Again, an unstable fracture in an elderly lady, hardly there is any posterior cortex. There is totally the posterior cortex was missing, and I did a Halifax nail in this patient. This is at 3 months. You can see the bone which was not there postally is getting formed, and this is at 8 months. The patient and the fracture has united comfortably. This is an article, provisional pin fixation in unstable fracture. So this is in 2015, this article came. Even Dr. Carr talked about this K-wire fixation in 2007. This article has come. But friends, I am doing this in 2015. 2005, I demonstrated a surgery in Aurangabad. Here I have used the technique of passing the K-wires to fix the fracture. Only thing is I have not published it. That's why this technique is going in the name of Dr. Carr's technique. So, but otherwise I've been using this technique much more earlier than him. I go even one step further. Even a crack and displaced fracture, I always fix with a K-wire, because when we insert the reamer, if the fracture is not fixed with the K-wires, the fracture ends get separated. You will not be able to make a proper canal for the nail. At the fracture site, when you insert the reamer, the bone gets separated like this. So that's the reason why when you're reaming, you should be holding them firmly together, make a proper canal in the proximal femur before you pass the nail inside. So that is the reason why I always tell, even an undisplaced fracture, always fix. Again, an undisplaced fracture, you hardly can see the intertrochanteric fracture here. I use the K-wire to fix it, then I have passed the nail. This is my technique and my way of doing it. Next one is good medial reduction. Medial reduction has to be very, very good. Why medial reduction is important? This is the dotted line along which the weight bearing passes. Medial to that is all compression forces, lateral to that is all tensile forces are working. So anywhere medially, if there is a large fragment or large gap, that is going to give trouble. It's always better to fix that with encerclage wire, because it is coming in the exactly the place where you will be putting the hip will be loaded. Next one is the reduction, the medial reduction. We have a recently an article which has come, which talks about neutral, positive and negative supports. What is negative cortical support? The beak entering into the medial canal is negative cortical support. Beak touching the distal shaft bone is the neutral cortical support. Beak coming out is a positive cortical support. Though neutral reduction is okay, I advocate positive cortical support. If it is in positive cortical support, there will be never chance for the beak to slip into the medial canal. I will show some pictures for that. So my advocation is always get the beak out. release the traction so that let the overlapping happen, so that this beak can never in its position anytime will be able to enter into the distal medullary canal. This is beak entering into the distal medullary canal negative, beak touching the distal neutral, beak coming out. This is a 2007 X-ray. You can see beak coming out is a positive cortical support. Negative cortical support always means it's a varus and the fracture will never unite, or it will go in for cutting through. This is somebody shared me this picture just last week. I just added this just now. Beautifully done. It appears like a neutral reduction. But if you analyze this, though it appears like a neutral reduction on AP, if you analyze this fracture closely, this is the distal fragment and the proximal fragment is going inside, and there is already a lesser trochanter is broken. There is a void here. So this beak has a place to enter into the distal medullary canal. So as expected, this has failed. The beak has entered into the distal medullary canal through the gap which was there created due to the absence of lesser trochanter, and this has gone into failure. So that is one of the reasons why I advocate, when there is a lesser trochanter which is broken, get additional 5 to 10 degree extra valgus in such cases. So this is recently this has come. Not only seeing in AP positive medial cortical support, you should also see that there should not be any negative cortical support in the lateral view also. The beak should be outside the distal canal. The beak should never be able to go inside the distal medullary canal. This is again, it appears like a neutral cortical support, but you can see that there is a lesser trochanter avulsion. Again, it has slipped into the distal medullary canal. So that is very, very important when you are analyzing your fracture. This was a case sometime in 2011. One of my friends in Sholapur was operating. The beak had gone into the medullary canal. He had already fixed that with KYS. He called me, Shankar, please come here, I'm having trouble. I went there, I removed some of the screws, then I used a bone hook, pulled the greater trochanter out. You can see that I could get the reduction properly into neutral reduction. Then I fixed the fracture with a PFN. This is immediate postoperative X-ray, and this is in December 2011. You can see that the fracture has consolidated without any problem because of the good neutral cortical support, but the bone ends were touching one another. Though the lesser trochanter is broken, the proximal end was touching the distal end, and the loss of lesser trochanter didn't interfere in my case. So I would like you all to try to get this valgus, 5 degrees extra valgus always, then it will never go into any problem, especially if there is a medial lesser trochanter is absent, then another 5 degree extra, go for 10 degree valgus. That's what I will advocate. So this is after 14 months, you can see in this patient operated in 2007 has healed very well. The next one is screw position. In AP, it should be center or slightly inferior. In lateral, it will be center or slightly posterior. The next one is tip apex distance. The tip apex distance both in AP and lateral put together should be less than 25 millimeter. Tip apex distance is normally measured from fovea centralis, that is a small depression in the center of the head of the femur. But many a time I advocate you to put the screw very inferiorly. In such cases, it's better to measure the distance from the articular surface. So I normally put an inferior screw kissing the calcar. Normally my inferior screw, this is the position I normally put, almost touching the neck. Then instead of measuring the distance from the fovea centralis, if I measure definitely AP lateral put together, it will be beyond 25 millimeter. I measure it from in the same line where it would have touched the cortex or it would have touched the subchondral bone, articular surface. This I call it as calcar TAD. So measure this calcar TAD. Calcar TAD should be less than 25. Then the screw length. Whether the superior screw should be just passing the fracture site or same length, longer, everything is wrong. It should be same at the same horizontal level. Superior screw should be shorter at least by 10 millimeter compared to the inferior screw. This article by Henschel talks about in vitro, outside, how a two-screw system works. They studied many combinations, inferior longer, superior shorter, superior longer, both equal. All the combinations they tried, and they have come to a conclusion that if inferior is longest as subchondral as possible and superior at the same site, then there will be minimal stress for the sliding to happen. When the hip is loaded, both the screws slide out simultaneously and there is no problem or jamming of the sliding mechanism. But if the superior screw is longer, the superior screw takes the load first, and especially if there is a void medially, the varus forces are acting more, which is compounded when the void is there medially. That will cause inferior screw to slide out and superior screw to get jammed. There will be jamming of the superior screw in the nail screw junction. The superior screw will not slide out. Instead of that, when the patient is not putting the load, when the patient puts the load, inferior screw goes out, superior screw will not come out. When the patient takes the load out in stance phase or swing phase, the superior screw enters inside because of this toggling of the head and the varus forcing happening. So that is the cause for Z effect. So never put a superior screw longer. So if you put a superior screw longer, the chances that either the superior screw breaking or superior screw penetrating very high. These are some of the different ways the Henschel has put the screw. Superior screw at the same horizontal level and inferior subchondral. This is what I normally advocate, that the best position where results have been best. If the superior screw is longer, here you can see the superior screw is longer, then screw breakage chances is very high. Then if the superior screw is longer and the inferior screw is short, this is where the Z effect is very common. So inferior screw short and superior screw long is an invitation for Z effect. And if both the screws are short, then both the screws are walk out. That is the commonest cause of sliding out, especially in osteoporotic bone. So this is about the putting the superior screw at the same level as the inferior screw and putting the inferior screw as subchondral as possible with less TAD. Next point is compress the fracture beautifully. Whatever is the compression you require, the sliding mechanism has to happen on table. Don't leave it for the nature to do it afterwards. If the nature does it, then there will be spoiling. See, this is a 75-year-old lady. After 14 months, the screws are not backed out. Whatever this fracture was begging, the compression it was begging, I have done it on table and it did not slide out even a millimeter. Another X-ray you can see, immediate post-operative X-ray, this is after 3 months. You can see that the screw heads are touching the bone here wherever they were there on day 1. So whatever the fracture requires, you can compress. This is how I normally compress the fracture. I release the traction and what I do is I compress alternately superior screw as well as the inferior screw. Superior durotational screw I compress, then again go back and compress the inferior cervical screw. Again I'll go to the superior screw and compress. So till that time I'm happy that my compression is working beautifully. I try to compress one after the other alternately in this fashion and I get this. So coming to the lateral wall problems. So these are the videos of a badly comminuted lateral wall. Earlier such fractures we were not seeing because less amount of CT and MRIs were being done. But nowadays we see this more, and also due to the longevity of life, we see a lot of these badly comminuted lateral wall fractures. So this article by who talks about if the lateral wall is less than 20.5 millimeter, DHS is contraindication as it causes iatrogenic fracture lateral wall. I normally, if the lateral wall is big enough, I fix that with a screw, which is at 95 degrees, which only in adults are a good quality bone I do, not in elderly people. But there are people who do tackle lateral wall. Dr. Naveen Thakkar and Dr. Ganjale, they propagate trochanteric buttress plate. Dr. Sushruth Babulkar and Sunil Kolkani, they propagate trochanteric wiring. I have my own technique of tackling lateral wall. This is Dr. Naveen Thakkar's slide where he uses a trochanteric buttress plate against the nail This is Dr. Shashikant Ganjale's trochanteric buttress plate. You can see that the cervical and derotation screw have been passed through the hole in this buttress plate. This is some of the pictures which I shared with me. So this is a good implant. If the lateral wall is missing, you can use them. That gives a support to the screw. This is the wiring technique Dr. Sushruth Babulkar and Sunil Kulkarni, the figure 8 wiring they have propagated. I do use trochanteric buttress plate in a badly comminuted fracture wall, but in very limited cases. This was grandfather of an orthopedic surgeon. He is a spine surgeon in Sholapur. So I had to use a trochanteric buttress plate because I didn't want to answer too many questions to him. I got a CT scan also done, reconstruction done, badly comminuted lateral wall. I used a trochanteric buttress plate, then I did a PFN, I did a wiring over that, and I also fixed the neck, inferior part of the neck with a malleolar screw. Whatever was possible, I had done in this case because he was grandfather of an orthopedic surgeon. So that was the reason. Otherwise, I normally don't try to open these fractures to lose the biology. This is at 6 weeks. The patient, because of the corona lockdown, he had not come back to show me. He lives around 300 kilometers from Sholapur. So he was brought here just for the operation. But this is at 6 weeks. This X-ray was sent to me. You can see that the screw heads are still touching against the bone. Now I tackle lateral wall. As I said earlier, if there is a lateral wall problem, in this case, as I said, there was a medial wall also. There was. I said earlier that when the medial wall is broken, I get not 5 degree, 10 degree extra valgus. That's what I told. This is what I normally do. This was a demonstration case. I did it at Sancheti Hospital. You can see so much of valgus I have got. It has created a distraction medially. The heads of the screw, it was a type of PFN which was available in that setup. It is not a regular setup. I use it. So I have yet use the head of the screw against the nail. This is immediate post-operative X-ray on 27th of January. Just the next month, Dr. Atul Patil, who is the head of the trauma services, he sent me this picture. Sir, this is beautifully consolidated. The patient is walking full weight bearing without any problem. Just at 6 weeks, the patient already, when I operated, it was about 10 days old. So even if we think it is 6 weeks old, such a nice consolidation. You can see the screw head is touching the nail and the nail is acting as the lateral wall in this case. Another badly comminuted lateral wall. Again, this case, you can see that the screw heads are touching the lateral wall and I have removed the implant also. The screw head requires the support of a lateral wall. If the lateral wall is not there or the screw slides out, what happens is it can toggle. It can toggle in this fashion. Because of this toggling, it loses the purchase in the head here. Once it loses the thread purchase in the head, it can walk out, especially in osteoporotic bones. So that is the problem in these cases. So the screw head always requires some support. The screw head losing the support of the lateral wall is the cause for the failure. You can avoid that by putting a fully threaded cancellous screw. In a transcervical fracture, we achieve nowadays compression with a partly threaded cancellous screw. Once partially threaded compression screw achieves full compression, we withdraw one after the other all the partially threaded compression screw and replace them with a fully threaded compression screw. So that is the reason why we get better outcome while putting a fully threaded cancellous screw. Similarly, why we use a Powell screw here? The Powell screw prevents the collapse because this is at a 90 degree. This is not at perpendicular at the fracture side. It prevents collapse happening because of the angle at which you have put the screw. So Powell screw does that work, or even a fully threaded screw also prevents collapse happening, unwanted collapse happening. So nowadays the trend of the intertrochanteric fracture is to get the compression on table, whatever you want, and prevent further collapse either by locking or seeing that you have compressed it properly on table. This is another 85-year-old, very elderly patient, very thin cortex, lateral cortex. What I have done, I have broken the lateral cortex and inserted the screw through the lateral cortex against the nail. Intentionally, I have inserted against the nail. See this immediate post-operative picture. Patient is so comfortable in walking. If I had not compressed the fracture, the patient will be having lot of pain. This toggling of the implant also causes the pain, and that will lose the purchase. Since I have caused a good fixation with the screws, this is not giving any trouble and the patient is able to walk. This is a 10 weeks post-operative. You can see that the screw heads are remaining there only. Osteoporotic bone in a 85-year-old man, it has not slid back. See how he was grateful to me, because everybody had told him that he is not going to survive after a hip fracture, and he was crying, literally crying. You can see the tear in his eyes. And when I took the picture and told it that I will show to my friends, he gave me blessings saying that you can use Dr. Saab, mera photo sabko dikha raha hai, mujhe itna acha kiya hai. So this is what the words he has used to me. Then another elderly 80-year-old lady, where again a badly comminuted lateral wall. Again you can see the lateral wall which is broken here. I have used the nail, head of the screw, again the nail, and again it has healed without any problem. This is 1.5 months post-operative. This is after 4 years in 2019. You can see the head is remaining at the same side. So this is how I tackle lateral wall without opening the lateral wall. Unfortunately, this cannot be done with a headless screw. Newer implants like the PFN A2, ZNN, Trigen nail, Halifax nail, none of them have got a head. So you cannot use them to compress against the nail as I can do in this fashion. That is one of the reasons why I tend to use the Indian nails. Even the original Synthes implant, PFN, is not having a head. So even I don't like the original imported PFN. Of course, it is not available nowadays. But I prefer to use an Indian implant which is having a head. Because of the presence of the head I am using. Nothing more than or nothing less than that. Next one is, if you are using a headless implant, as I said, I don't use a headless implant. By chance, if you use a headless implant, like the one Halifax nail I have used, it has to be slightly out from the lateral cortex so that it can slide out, because it is difficult for you to compress the fracture. The fracture has to collapse while healing. So if the lateral end of the blade goes inside, that gets jammed. This has happened in my own case. A ZNN type of nail I was doing last year, the lateral end of the screw, the cervical screw, lag screw has gone inside, that got jammed. So the lateral end of the nail has to be slightly outside, so when the fracture collapses, it can come out and slide out. If it gets jammed, if the hole doesn't match, if you already put inside, the hole will not match, and it prevents collapse happening. Penetration is very, very more. That is one of the reasons why PFN A2 penetration chances are very, very high. I think I showed this X-ray earlier. Dr. Joydeep Das, professor from Burdwan Medical College, sent where the lateral cortex, the PFN A2 blade was outside. So as expected, the fracture healed without penetrating inside. With this, I have already explained, so I'll not go much further about this. So this is how you can predict it on day one itself, what is going to happen. So learn to predict the outcome by knowing the deficiency in the surgery. Once you start predicting and start learning to know what is your own deficiency, well, then only we can improve. Lastly, the nail should be slightly out at the entry site, because this is one of the point of fixation that will prevent medialization of the nail. Here you can see a nail which has been used without a top screw, which has entered further medially. Like a DHS, it has got medialized. Another case, this is my friend Dr. Mukesh Agarwal from Guwahati has sent to me, where the tip of the PFN is inside the bone. So in due course of time, though it looks very well initially, in due course of time, uncontrolled medialization went into delayed union and the implant failed out after about 9 months of time. So this also I had told him initially itself. There is a bit medial gap, nail tip is buried inside, not allowing collapse. The nail has gradually moved out, touching the lateral cortex, and instability has led to non-union. That is what I had written to him. So this prediction can be done as soon as we see the immediate post-operative X-ray. So on table, if you see that your nail is too much inside, you can build it up with a extra 5 mm or 10 millimeter top screw. So these are the 10 predictors of successful outcome which I wanted to discuss with you. I once again thank Dr. Manish Bansal, Secretary, Dr. Harshavardhan Chanda, the President, and my friend Dr. K.D. Tripathi, the immediate past President of Ahmedabad Orthopedic Society, for the asking me to give and share my knowledge. I hope I have done justice to whatever you are looking for, and I hope this answers whatever you are expecting from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shivshankar. It was an excellent and unique journey of trochanteric fractures from spinal to JVET nail through DHS, PFN and TFN. And you have touched each and every aspect, minor and finer aspects of the PFN and trochanteric fractures. Now, may I invite our panelists to say their suggestions or questions. Dr. Dhawan, please. Dr. Sanjay Dhawan is there?
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Dhawan, your comments and some questions.
Hi. Congratulations to Dr. Shivshankar, as usual, your master this technique. But sir, I just wanted to ask you one thing, that how this technique, because I have been using encerclage for lateral wall and sometimes encerclage with that trochanteric buttress plate. But what is the mechanism you suggest that your screw abutting the nail is going to help the lateral wall?
I've shown the results. Definitely,
Definitely.
if there is a coronal split and the top and bottom force fragments are going away, it's definitely better to bring them back. Yeah, that's what we can do. For a fragment which is separated, we can put a wire and bring them back. But if it is communicated, if it is only communicated, there is no point in putting an encerclage wire, because there is a periosteum which is still intact, which is not allowing the fragment to go out. Just getting a good valgus reduction, getting the screw into the head and neck, and getting the nail into the shaft will heal. Around the nail itself, all the fragment will heal. So select badly comminuted fractures for this screw touching the lateral wall. If it is a young patient with a split or separated fragment, it's always better to put them back, either be using a trochanteric buttress plate or putting a wire together. Yes, that's a nice question.
Dr. Shiva, you had given that anterior-medial aspect of the trochanteric fracture, but somehow in between you said that the lesser trochanter fragment has to be fixed with the wire. Exactly how to go ahead with this posterior-medial defect? Yeah.
Okay. Lesser trochanter, I never said that it has to be fixed. If the medial part, if there is a long butterfly fragment involving the lesser trochanter, a subtrochanteric fracture with a lesser trochanter avulsion, those are the only cases where I am able to put 1 or 2 encerclage wire. I will do open reduction, planned open reduction with encerclage wiring, and then put the nail. So if just lesser trochanter is broken, I have never made an attempt to do anything to the lesser trochanter. I have never put a screw, or I have never tried to bring it back also. It heals wherever it is required, it heals. So not an issue.
Any other question from the panelists? Dr. Tribhuvan, Dr. Kapil.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, Manish.
Sir, what is your experience in such a badly comminuted older people with the replacement instead of reconstruction, sir?
Okay, I am not a replacement surgeon, though I am trained in replacement. I have done fellowships in Bombay Hospital, UK, Germany, everywhere. But I am not doing replacement to that extent to call myself as a replacement surgeon. One. Second thing is, I always feel that if you do a fixation, osteosynthesis, and make the patient walk, this is much more simpler surgery and much less debilitating, less morbid surgery rather than a replacement surgery. If you think that if you are not able to, if your gut feeling is that this patient is going to fail in your hand, then you can do it. I'm not against people who think that they are not able to do a osteosynthesis good job and they go and do a good replacement. I am not against them. Let them do it for patients above 75 years. But any patient less than 75 years, like 50 years, 45 years, if somebody is doing replacement, that's a crime, I feel.
But Shiva,
Yeah.
Dr. Shiva.
yeah, please.
Yes, Sanjay.
Sir, once there is a coronal split on a
Yes.
proximal segment,
Yes.
and you put a nail, these fragments don't go apart. What is the technique that you can keep it together while putting the nail? Because once you have put a nail and these fragments are apart, you cannot bring them together by encerclage or plate. Even if you put plate might be there, but the gap will sustain.
Yeah.
So,
If I suspect preoperatively that the fracture has a coronal split also, what normally I do is I put a wire anteriorly in the neck and as well as posteriorly in the neck. I just hold it from outside when I'm using the reamer, centering awl. So that will make sure that the fragment will not get much more separated. That's how I normally do it. But I feel that these osteoporotic bones, they don't get much separated. The muscular osteoperiosteal sheath is so strong enough that they hold it very well.
even in younger patient, you will not do encerclage or anything.
Young patient I will do. Young patient I will do encerclage wiring with a good quality bone, a split fracture. Already preoperatively we know, or even in the X-ray we have seen. Then I will plan to put a encerclage wire, but I will not put in a elderly patient. No, after 70, I don't normally put a encerclage wire. That has done more damage in my hands.
So, Dr. Shiva, you must have got in your vast experience many non-unions and implant failure of the PFN at the fracture of the nail or ZFA cutting through. So you go again in the another PFN, or you just change the devices and manage the non-unions and implant failure?
See, majority of the non-unions I have seen is in the subtrochanteric fractures. I hardly have seen a problem with the intertrochanteric fracture. Whatever the intertrochanteric fracture problem I have seen is the superior cutout and going to varus. In those cases, either I have tackled them immediately or I have tackled them by valgus osteotomy using angle blade plate. But subtrochanteric non-union, I have vast experience of treating so many cases sent by many people, or even many people call me to operate. What I normally do is for a non-union, nail is not at all a good implant, because you are depending upon interlocking above and below. The nail can twist and that will not give a good stability at the end of the day. For that purpose, we should use a local augmentation plate. I use again a PFN, I put another PFN, I make sure that the good valgus of the neck, head and neck, I get it, and I also freshen the ends, put an augmentation plate as well as bone grafting. So I've done a lot of such cases. But unfortunately, the intertrochanteric problems I haven't faced much, especially in the last 15 years. In my own hands, in the last 15 years, if I tabulate my own hospital data, I have only 2 or 3 patients where they have gone into trouble with the PFN. Because I have analyzed my own failures earlier and I have tried to solve the problems. That is the reason why I am able to give all these answers to you.
Shiva, one question.
Yes.
Are you using short PFN or long PFN? Because most of the time in short PFN, we may see the anterior cortex being touched or impinged by the nail. So what would you prefer?
Yes, yes, Dr. Kapil.
PFN in these cases, your experience with TFN?
Yeah, as I said initially in the talk, 1999 to 2004, I was using PFN, which is 25 centimeter. That is long PFN we call. That is a regular PFN.
Regular PFN.
After 2004, I stopped and I started using 18 centimeter TFN for intertrochanteric fracture as well as fracture just above or below the trochanter. If it is too much below the trochanter, I will use a long PFN, which is side specific. Right and left are different. So my indication for a high subtrochanteric fracture at the level of lesser trochanter, at least 1 inch above and below, I use a TFN only 18 centimeter. I have never repented. I have got good number of cases You can see many of my YouTube videos also where I have used a regular TFN in high subtrochanteric fractures. The book, the people who write the paper, they normally say that subtrochanteric fracture we should use a long PFN. But in high subtrochanteric fractures, I have used short PFN only, the TFNs.
So you have stopped using 25 centimeters?
Yeah, practically I have stopped using it.
Okay, you advise TFN or a long PFN?
Correct. Either 80 centimeter or side specific, 36, 37, 38.
Veshwar is still coming up with, is giving 25 centimeters PFN.
Yeah, correct. Once you start demanding 18 centimeter, then they will only supply, because those people also have manufactured so many nails. Unless you ask, they don't give, because they want to sell that easily.
Dr. Shiva, even
Yes.
in long PFN, many times you get a tip striking to the anterior cortex
Yes.
near the patella. So
Correct.
high chances of getting a stress fracture right then,
Yes.
or periprosthetic fracture that.
Correct.
Is there any way to avoid that?
Yes.
Or what should be done, suppose?
Yes. Yes, Dr. Sanjay Devan. See, when you are passing the guide wire, think that this is the distalmost part of the femur. This is the knee joint. This is the distalmost part. Your guide wire should be seen parallel to the anterior cortex or parallel to the posterior cortex in the center, both in AP and lateral. Many a time what happens is we just push the guide wire, which will be touching the cortex from inside. We try to ream, and the nail will also go in the same direction. That's one mistake we normally do. Another thing is, never use a straight guide wire. Give your guide wire a uniform round curvature like the nail. Long guide wire, what you are using for your reaming, should also have a small curvature so that it is in the center of the whole femur from top to bottom. Many a time what happens is, the femur is curved. When you make an entry from the entry side, that will touch the posterior cortex in the proximal fragment, that will touch the anterior cortex, because the guide wire is straight. And we end up removing posterior cortex more in the proximal fragment and removing anterior cortex more in the distal fragment. So this also has to be taken care. So I normally give small bend to the tip, so that by rotating it, I can centralize the guide wire, and I give a uniform bend to the tip, almost similar to the nail. So that will make my guide wire in the center of the femur. That's one. Second thing is, never hammer the nail, just shovel with the hand. And whenever you are going to hit the anterior cortex, try to lift the knee and push it. Then it will also get centralized. And normally you can also remove the guide wire, and then you can push the nail. So these are some of the things by which you can centralize the nail properly.
Dr. Shiva, meeting
Yeah.
will not be complete without your comment of that helical blades with the so-called very strong and very costly nails being propagated in India, the country like India, where people cannot afford. Whole surgery is being done, the amount that they sell the nail, about 45, 50,000. The whole surgery can be done in that amount. So your comment on the helical blade and costly nails, which is being propagated all over the country by the manufacturers.
I think, yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Dr. KD, what
Yes.
you are telling. So this is the nail, Indian made PFN I normally use. So here you can see the imported one is not having a head. So the original synthesis is also not having head. So many a time that will also penetrate inside and it will touch the nail. So what I like is something which is a head against which I can compress the fracture. Regarding which implant is good? We had so many implants in the nail. Now we know that DH is the gold standard. Similarly, we have so many nails, and which one is gold standard? After the PFN, helical blade came in the market because they remove very little of bone and they compress the fracture. But the problem with the helical blade was disengagement, because this helical blade could go through the hole in the nail. And even in osteoporotic fracture, what they claim, they're saying that it was very good, that was coming out. And another problem was, if it was hammered too much inside, penetration into the joint was very, very common, because it's a single bone. Penetration into the joint was very common. So they said that keep 10 millimeter away from the subchondral bone. We all know that the best fixation a bone, the screw gets is in the subchondral bone. and they say that it has to be 10 millimeter away. Are you happy with this?
Yeah.
So just because to prevent penetration, keeping 10 millimeter away. Another thing is they had problem at the entry site itself, lateral wall getting comminuted because of the flat nail. So they make this D-shaped nail with a little more extra curvature so that the lateral surface will not come in contact with the bone. That is what we normally use, PFN-A2. PFN-A came in the market only for a short duration of time. Immediately it gave place for the PFN-A2. Even in PFN-A2, the helical blade has a mechanism to compact 7 millimeter. Some companies have 5 millimeter. Here you can see the surgeon failed to compress. This is just 2 days back, somebody shared with me this picture. Yes, failed to compress because it only compresses few millimeter. So if it has been opened unknowingly, it cannot compress. And how you can decide that the fracture requires 7 millimeter compression, you tell me. If the fracture doesn't require 20, if the fracture like a subtrochanteric fracture doesn't require compression, why you want this compression mechanism to happen? Like a ZRN, again, it's a single screw. Especially in a single screw, what happens is when you are using the single screw, coupling of the bone happens, the rotation, spinning of the bone will happen. Even a Halifax nail is also single nail, though they have increased the surface by putting a tri-ply nail. There is no head, so you cannot compress the fracture. If you compress the fracture, you have to put the set screw. If you put the set screw, also sometimes this back end goes inside slightly. I have observed them. So I feel that PFN is the best implant. It's a 2-screw system. 2 screw is always better than 1, and you can achieve compression whatever. If it is a subtrochanteric fracture, you don't require any compression. If it is a young adult, you require 5 millimeter compression. If it is an osteoporotic bone, 10 millimeter compression. Like that you can achieve. See, it's a right and left hip. So if you are using a single screw system like ZNN, what happens is on the left side hip, if you are right side hip, if you are operating, the fracture closes when you are spinally tightening. But if you are operating on the left side hip, when you are finally tightening the screw, it opens up. You are with me, Dr. KD?
Yes.
So that is the problem with this 2-screw system. See, this was a case I operated. This video is there on the YouTube. I have not compressed this. This patient was a 45-year-old lady, good quality bone. This fracture did not require any compression. While I try to compress, see the distance, the wide wire, see what is happening. You can see that the helical blade is losing the purchase and it is coming back. So this is means whatever the helical blade supposed to have purchased in an osteoporotic bone, it is coming out in such a young, good quality bone itself. How do you expect this to have a good purchase in osteoporotic bone? In a subtrochanteric fracture, I had to compare. Again, this video is there available at the Akola subtrochanteric fracture demonstration. Again, this was a PFN I have used for a high subtrochanteric fracture. I had to collapse this. Without opening, I cannot hammer the helical blade. After opening, I had to collapse this before I had to lock this. Without locking, the head can spin. So this again, in a subtrochanteric fracture, why there was a necessity. That is the reason why TFN-A has come in the market. PFN-A2 has given way for the helical blade. There is a small knob here, and there is a slot. There is a round spiral slot. When the helical blade is going, it rotates inside the nail and goes inside. It rotates. You can see my picture. It can rotate inside and go inside, and there is no collapse mechanism nowadays available. And already you can see they have copied the Gamma design because the Gamma screw, the lag screw patent period is over. They have already copied that screw. The another screw is Trigen nail. Trigen nail, either you can keep the second screw at 0, 10 or 15. Means you can compress 0 millimeter or 10 millimeter or 15 millimeter. If the fracture requires 12 millimeter compression, you cannot do that. If the fracture requires 16 millimeter compression, you cannot do that. And also, when the screw is going within the another screw, this is the worm technique, worm mechanism, you don't get the feeling of the bone. When you are tightening with your hand, what the feedback you get of the quality of the bone, that feedback will never get in this. So you might over compact the fracture or you might less compress the fracture. Though the mechanism is good, I will give this a second position. My first implant of choice is number 1 today is PFN. My second choice of implant is Trigen nail. My third choice of implant is Halifax nail. Again, this is a ZNN. So somebody was asking me question. This is such a large butterfly fragment medially. This I opened and put it back. This is again a large butterfly fragment with a lesser trochanter. There I have opened and put it back and done the wiring. So if the medial fragment is big enough, then only I will open and put a butterfly fragment. If there is only avulsion of the lesser trochanter, I have never done. So this is the Halifax nail where with a set screw you can compact and after achieving compression you can fix it. But as I said earlier, I like 2-screw system, compression is possible. This already I have shown, so I will not run through that. So already I have shown that compression, whatever is required, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, 5 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 15 millimeter, everything can be given with a PFN. And even if the lateral cortex is missing, you can use the head of the nail itself, of the screw itself as a lateral wall, again osteoporotic fractures, and use them. And none of the other screw can do that. Headless screw can do this. So PFN came to market in 1997 by Synthes people. But Smith and Nephew went to the court in USA in 2006. See the dates. September 28, 2006. On October 27th, within a month, judgment was given by the American court saying that Synthes should withdraw all TFN, PFN product and even derotational screw. Even derotational screw has been patented by Smith and Nephew in American patent law. So America gave a verdict against Synthes to stop manufacturing and withdraw all. That is the reason why in 2006, after this October 2006, all the PFN by Synthes were withdrawn and they wanted to have some share in the market. What they did, they came out with a helical blade in 2007, that is PFN-A. That also had problem. So they came in 2010 with anti-rotation, PFN-A2 they came out. Again, that also had problem. So they came with TFN-A in 2017. So that also is not very good. That helical blade is not giving such a good purchase, whatever they tell, whatever the study they have done. So they are back with again lag screw system. This is the lag screw system of PFN or gamma nail. So they have come back. So this is more than the science involved. It's more of commerce involved. That is the reason why all this, the people who are manufacturing something different from the PFN, because PFN is patented. This patent of PFN will go out in 2026. Till that time, Smith and Nephew only can market PFN. But unfortunately, Smith and Nephew is doing very great with their gamma nail. They are doing excellent with gamma nail. Gamma nail is sold like hotcakes in China and Japan even today. So they are doing great business. They also have an interturn nail. So when Smith and Nephew has 2 nails, both gamma nail and interturn nail for a intertrochanteric fracture, they are least interested to promote one more product and compete with their own product. So if they bring back PFN into the market, Smith and Nephew will be having PFN, gamma nail and interturn nail, and the market is the same, intertrochanteric fractures. So already these two are doing great work. So that is the reason why they are not come out with the PFN in the market. So this is gamma nail, Dr. Haldar. When 1 million gamma nail was sold, that is 10 lakh gamma nails were sold, he was given a golden gamma nail. So always try to use your judgment. It's not the implant, but it's the surgeon who is more important to get a good reduction and good successful outcome. So I have shown that good results can be obtained even with a simple DHS by using TSP or even using a wiring technique, or even with the intramedullary implant one can use screws, or without the screws or trochanteric buttress plate, so many things. So I feel that it is more of a market gimmick and we are sold out to these implants, and it is less because of the real science behind it. So that is one of the reasons why we feel that, I feel that there is no PFN which is available in the market. And also another problem is because PFN is patented, the Smith and Nephew is patented, it's not available anywhere in the world. It is not available in China, it is not available in Japan, it is not available in Europe, it is not available in America. When it is not available for anybody, there will not be any literature available. Only in India it is available because we don't have any great laws preventing me to copy these nails and sell it in the market. So we should be thankful to our Indian laws to some extent because we can use anything as we require. Unfortunately, these same laws elsewhere prevent anybody to use a PFN because nobody using PFN. No articles are coming about goodness of the PFN. That is the reason why if you read any literature, they talk about PFN-A2, a Kama nail or anything else as better because they are not using PFN. This we should understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Over to Manishi Bansal. Dr. Manishi, over
Sir,
to you.
Sir, there is one more question in the chat box. Someone has asked, in a very bulky patient, Yogeshwar jig does not have space. Your comment, please, sir.
Two things. I probably have not got bulky patient, but I have operated even up to 120 kg patient. I never faced this problem. Yes, you have to take a little longer incision because your incision becomes little proximal initially. Then your jig keeps on touching the soft tissue. It keeps on cutting till that time you can properly place your next screw. That's all I can tell.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Manishi.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I think not.
So thank you, sir. Thank you very much for illustrious discussions on that intertrochanteric fracture fixation and your journey or your experience, sharing experience for last 30 years. We have got our president now, Dr. H.V. Chandra, with us. I will request them to say a closing remark. Dr. H.V. Chandra, sir.
You have to unmute.
Sir. Sir.
Thank you, Manishi.
Sir, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. B. Shiv Shankar. Thank you for the very informative lecture. And I, on behalf of Orthopedic Society of Allahabad, I thank you and all the panelists present today and making it a very successful webinar today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks, sir.
sir. On behalf of AOS, I thanks from my core of heart, Dr. B. Shiv Shankar, sir, and we will expect you, sir, in the future also sharing your experiences and wisdom, sir.
Thank you. Yes, sure.
Thank you.
I'm also thankful to all the UPM office bearers for joining and all the members all pan across the UP for joining and making this event a great event. I'm also thankful to my seniors and teachers, especially on this Teachers' Day. I think this is our best possible way to pay our gratitude and respect toward our teachers. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining today, sir. Thank you all, sir.